Nikon made a camera that can legitimately work for video? Pfft, no they didn't, who are you kidding? Wait, it can do full sensor 4K 30 frames per second? Yup. It's got awesome autofocus? Yup. And it's got better in-body image stabilization than Sony? Yup. What kind of crazy world are we living in right now? Is the Nikon Z6 worth getting for YouTube/online content? Let's find out. What's up everyone, I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. So I am pretty shocked right now. I've been using the Nikon Z6 in my videos for the last week or so, and I am straight up blown away. I legitimately never ever thought that I would say that Nikon has a serious entry into the online video marketplace, but dang it, thanks Nikon, you have proved me wrong. But before we get too far into the video, however, I do want to thank my friends over at B&H Photo for sending this to me to try out, for the next month or so. If you'd like to get your very own Z6, which, dang it, I might actually do too because I'm currently cameraless, there will be links in the description below. First up, let's cover the basic specs of the Nikon Z6 so we're all on the same page. And quick disclaimer, I am not a photographer, nor am I a professional videographer. I make home video and I make these, this is the frame. I do this because this is what you can see. And these YouTube videos, so those are the specs we'll be covering today. The Z6 very recently released and is the first in the line of full frame mirrorless cameras from photography king, Nikon. It has a 24.5 megapixel BSI CMOS sensor. It comes equipped with the X-Speed 6 image processing engine. Wow, that sounds X-Speed, that sounds cool. It can record up to 4K 30 frames per second, and if you're using an external recorder, you can do both log and 10-bit through the HDMI out. It has 273-point phase detection autofocus system. Most surprisingly, it has built-in 5-axis vibration reduction, which is what they call stabilization, and it's actually pretty darn good. And it has a 3.2-inch tilting touchscreen LCD, which works. I can't wait to talk about all of these things we're talking about right now. And it has an XQD card slot. It does not have SD cards. Physically, this camera feels great. Like we mentioned in the unboxing video, this camera feels very comparable to the A7 III. I mean, it does feel very, very durable body that has a decent amount of heft to it. I mean, it's not my favorite feeling body of all year. That would probably go to the EOS R, but I mean, this feels pretty good. It also doesn't have as many physical buttons and dials as some of the other cameras we've checked into this year, but what it does have, it does a lot with. Those that watch my videos know that I prefer a mode selection dial, and thankfully the Z6 has that. Also on the top is an LCD screen that is pretty darn useful in showing you your camera settings, even in video while using it. You also have the on-off switch, record button, the shutter release, and one of the things that has really impressed me is the thoughtfulness of the button. I mean, these are not just like haphazardly thrown on the camera. You can easily one-hand control everything video-wise, just from right here. Well, except the mode dial. I guess you could like one-handed, and then back, and then back. See, one-handed. On the back, you'll get a pretty standard assortment of buttons, but what I really want to focus on is the LCD touchscreen. Yes, most cameras have this style of not fully articulating touchscreens, complaining, but the touchscreen is really, really good. Let's also talk about the sides of the camera really quick because those generally hold the most important parts. This side of the camera has all of the outputs you need for video. Microphone out, headphone in, mini, not micro HDMI, which I really like. I mean, I'd prefer full HDMI, but it's rare that you actually get that. And these little flaps also do a good job of getting out of the way. The thing that I dislike most about the A7 III is how their little control port doors they get in the way of everything, so it's nice there. On the other side, however, is the card slot. Yes, it has a single card slot, and that, that doesn't really bother me in the slightest, but what does bother me, and we mentioned this in the specs, is this is an XQD card slot. Much more on this later. Back to me really quickly. I mean, we'll get more into this when we actually start physically using the camera later, but I do want to mention how impressed I am with both the touchscreen and how well it works with the menu system. Now, I don't speak Nikon at all. I have barely ever used a Nikon camera in my life, but this very impressively eased me into their system to where, after a week of use, I feel very confident in changing the settings. It was less confusing than the Fuji X-T3 menu system that we used a couple months ago. I do really like this. On the front of the camera are 2 additional function buttons and that huge Nikon Z mount. This mount is so darn big, it's almost the same size as the entirety of a GoPro Hero 7. Like, it's huge, and that's really cool, and I am so excited to see what new lenses they will end up producing with this extra flange distance. But that's enough talking at the camera. Let's assemble the nitty-gritty camera committee and judge the Z6 on the 3 most important aspects of cameras ever conceived by mankind for YouTubers / online content creators. First up, image quality. Again, and this is pretty constant throughout the video, I've never really used Nikon cameras before. From my perspective, Nikon just hasn't really offered anything before that was even close to being useful for video. The Z6, however, has changed my mind. The camera I used throughout most of this year was the Sony a7 III, which is still a fantastic camera. But the Z6 has quite possibly better image quality than the a7 III. No kidding, the standard picture profile looks beautiful, and I just have nothing to complain about. I know this makes me sound like a fanboy, but this is the Nikon camera I've used for the longest in my entire life, and I don't think I've had enough time to become a fanboy. Though, I mean, how long does it take to be a fanboy? How long? I mean, I'm okay with being one. Leave a comment below. Let me know how long it takes to be a fanboy, and then I'll keep the camera just long enough for that, because I do really like it. But don't take my word for it. Let's hop outside real quick for the most important part, which is the video / vlogging test. Okay, and here we are to do the video / vlogging test of the Nikon Z6. Now, you may or may not have noticed there's a whole lot in addition. You know, I don't normally have this full rig on my vlogging test. However, like we mentioned earlier, this uses XQD cards, and I don't have any XQD cards, so we've got to record everything into the Atomos Ninja 5 to make it happen. But that does do a couple of benefits where I'll be able to see everything and be properly framed. It'll be like having a flip screen on a non-flippable screen camera. Plus, the stabilization on this is really good, so I don't imagine it's going to be that big of a, difference make. Amazing. But that's enough talking about the stabilization. Let's get to the actual vlogging test. And it doesn't help when you have a severely sprained wrist from falling off of a one wheel, because I'm an idiot. Vlogging test begin. Whoa! Okay, and so here is the vlogging test of the Nikon Z6. Now again, we do have it hooked up to the huge Ninja 5 with a battery and cable and all that stuff, so this isn't exactly the setup I would use for vlogging. I'd get an XQD card if I was gonna do that for real, but you can see that even with the additional weight, what the footage looks like. We're currently in aperture priority mode, f4 on the aperture because I like, a shallow background when I can get it. And this is the image quality. I really like the image quality coming out of this camera. Like, I am legitimately shocked at how much I like it. I figured I'd get this camera. I say that a lot, right? But I figured I'd get this camera. Some of the cameras coming out recently have been kind of uninspired. I have been very excited about the Nikon, but since Nikon's never really had a good video camera, I wasn't like super worked up about it. But since using it, I'm having a real struggle right now because I am currently cameraless. I had a C200, I sold it because it was just it was too big to bring out and do the camera tests I want to do because people start staring at you. So I'm currently cameraless, but I'm deciding on, I've got an a7 III at the house. I've got the Nikon Z6 right now. I'm really kind of debating back and forth between the two, which, we'll do a video this week about. Stay tuned on Friday. But yeah, this is the vlogging test. And you can see we were just doing it with my severely sprained wrist. So if it's working out for that, it'll work out for you. It's not as heavy as I thought it would be. This is actually not a terrible setup right now. And this Nikkor lens, this 24-70, is one of my favorite f4 lenses ever. I really like it. I hope you guys like it too. Okay, we're back to the camera. Let's say hi to everybody. Hey everybody, hey everybody, everybody. This is the M50, everybody else. This is the Z6, be friends, right? Get some better lighting there. That's why this camera is in that position, because it's way better lighting. And then, so we're recording the audio right now through the M50, but this is the audio out of the Z6, audio test 1, 2, 3, audio test 1, 2, 3. You would never use this audio, you would always have a microphone, obviously, but okay, back to the video. And this is the indoor / low light / studio test with the Nikon Z6. So it's set to auto basically everything. I have it set to aperture priority mode. We've got the audio, it's still the XLR mic going through the thing, plugged into everything, but this is the image quality you can expect if you want to use this as your own, like primary YouTube camera. I do think the image quality coming out of this thing is superb. I'm legitimately shocked by that because I never ever thought I would say a Nikon camera has awesome video quality, but darn it, the Z6 has really good image quality. I mean, we're currently recording through my Ninja 5 because again, I don't have any XQD cards, but I think it does a fantastic job. And again, this kit lens is my favorite kit lens of all time. I don't really like f4 lenses, you know, because I'm a YouTuber. I like having as blurry a background as possible, so I do try to get as fast of lenses as possible, so f4s aren't really something that I look for, but this kit lens is really good. So enough of me rambling about how much I like this image quality. Again, this is the low light test. This is the exact same lighting that you just saw on the A7 III a few moments ago. And okay, back to the video. And thus ends the image quality test. It is important, but only up to a certain level. Now it is time for the most important part of any video camera for online distribution, fiddliness. So fiddliness is the most important aspect of a camera to me. What fiddliness is how long does it take for me to set this up and get recording. So there's two parts of fiddliness. There's how hard is it to set the camera up, and then once you've hit record, how hard is it to get the footage afterwards. Now, the Nikon Z6, I think is a little easier than the A7 III, and again, we'll do a bigger comparison on that later this week, but I think it's pretty good for that. It's got a touchscreen that's really easy to focus everything on. I really like how intelligently they've laid out all of the controls and dials and stuff like that. Even with my busted hand right here, I can operate the camera pretty well one-handed. The really big thing when it comes to the body that I don't like when it comes to fiddliness is if you're using a recorder, which I will because I don't have any XQD cards, you have to still hit the record button or the camera shuts off. So if you're using this recorder, you have to hit the record button to put it in recording mode, then start recording through the recorder. If you just try to leave it on like you would an A7 III, it will eventually shut off and screw up your clip. I found that out through experience. So that's one of the big fiddliness things that I don't like. But once you hit record, how easy is it to get the footage you want? It's super easy. Like this camera is crazy easy. I was very shocked. Nikon's never been known for their good video capabilities. They've never been known for their good autofocus. The autofocus on this thing is legitimate. The video quality is really good. The auto modes are fantastic. If you go back to last week and you watch my ADD versus M50 video or the why you should buy the M50, it was shot on this in aperture priority mode. Legitimately. This thing is amazing for fiddliness. This is probably the second easiest to use full frame mirrorless camera out there right now. The EOS R has the flippy screen, which I'll give the flippy screen to the EOS R, but the stabilization on this thing is, I would say, class leading for full frame mirrorless. I haven't used the Z7, but the stabilization on this thing is legit. The image quality is legit. The auto modes are legit. This thing is about as easy to use as full frame mirrorless cameras get. I mean, it is, and it's put me in a quandary. I don't like so many choices. Why does everything have to be so good right now? Why can't anything just, you know, be bad? Somebody make a bad camera so I can then like easily knock it off the list. Okay, back to the video. And we're back in time to cover what disproportionately is more important on this category than normal because this is a brand new camera type, the ecosystem. And here's where we run into the biggest weakness of the Nikon Z6. You know, I've been praising this darn camera for the last roughly 10 minutes, and yeah, this might be my favorite camera body released in 2018. I mean, the camera body itself is amazing. But, and it's a big one, we talk about this a lot, camera bodies only get you so far, and the ecosystem really isn't there for the Z6 right now. Like the EOS R, there are currently only 3 lenses available for the Z6. Though I will say the 24-70 kit lens is my favorite kit lens of all time. I like this even more than I like the X-T3 kit lens. However, unlike the EOS R, the Nikon F-mount adapter, I don't think it provides the same value as the EF mount adapter. Canon's EF mount is one of the standards of the video world. I mean, EF lenses are in some cases designed to work so well with video autofocus. Now, in my experience, and again, it's not much with Nikon, Nikon F doesn't give me the same confidence, and I say that mainly because there aren't really any proper Nikon video cameras out there, you know, until now. I mean, they are primarily a photography company. Now, that is not necessarily a deal breaker for me because I do think the lenses the Z6 currently has can cover everything you need for online content. I mean, it's got the 24-70 zoom, it's got a 35mm and a 50mm 1.8. That's pretty much it that you need. And another big but, and this one could be the deal breaker, and it's the one that's keeping me from just like wholeheartedly accepting this as my camera overlord. And we briefly mentioned this in fiddliness, but I want to reiterate that the Nikon Z6 does not have an SD card slot. It has an XQD card slot. Now, I don't really care about single slot versus dual card slot. That's not important to me. Even when I have a camera with dual card slots, I generally only use one slot anyway. But being able to use cheap recording media and share that media between my cameras when somebody forgets to empty the SD cards, I mean, that happens to me all of the time, and it's a pretty darn big deal for me, so I'm always trading out SD cards to try to get me that little bit extra. And I can't do that with an XQD card. I don't even have an XQD card right now. I've been using my Ninja 5 for all of the video recording so far, which, I mean, that does work exceedingly well. However, the problem comes into is you can't do any of the slow motion modes because the 120 frames per second does not go through HDMI. Now, if you have figured out how to make that work, please leave a comment below and let me know because that would be awesome. So what, right? So should you get a Nikon Z6? This is a really tough one for me. I mean, I very much like this camera. I think the image quality is great. The stabilization is awesome. It might be the best full frame stabilization I've seen yet. And the autofocus is really good. I like this way more than I thought I would, and I was excited about this to start off with. But that XQD card slot is a pretty darn big deal for me. I don't want to spend $200 for a 128 gigabyte card for when I can get a 4K capable SD card for 40 bucks, or I could spend the same amount and get an even bigger solid state drive to record with. So that's a huge hurdle for me, and I don't know that I can overcome that. If, like me, you use a recorder, that's not as big of a deal, and and 95% of the time this would be recording through the recorder anyway, so I don't know that that's that big of a deal. I actually do think that this might be the best full frame video camera out there right now for the price. I mean, what else are you looking at? You're looking at the Red Monstro, which is full frame, but that's Red Monstro prices. You got the Canon C700, which is also Canon C700 prices, and you've got I think the Arri has a full frame camera also. I do think that this is the best video full frame camera out there for the price. Once the ecosystem is a little more robust, it will be easier to recommend. You will have to make that decision based on the ecosystem right now. Thanks for watching.